I have a ramen problem. Anytime I think I'm down to my last pack of instant ramen, I look back and somehow more have appeared. It's the never-ending ramen stash. So I need to get through them all, and this is my way of announcing that I'm doing my most popular video series early this year. I usually do it every December, but this 5th annual 30-day ramen challenge will happen this month. So get your chopsticks ready. Day 1 will be tomorrow. When your friend asks you to make a ramen station at her wedding, you say yes. And that's how I'm starting off day 1 of my 5th annual instant ramen challenge. My goal was to be able to put together something that Tipsy Lisa would be able to do since this was a late night thing. I had smoked pulled pork, dried ramen toppings, cilantro, green onions, lime, fried garlic, chili oil, sriracha, and quail eggs, which got quite the attention from everyone. Simple and easy for people to make themselves. I had vegetarian ramen, spicy ramen, and also non-spicy versions. I have to admit, the presentation was not the best, but it got the job done. Unfortunately, the bride and groom were unable to make it to this part of the night, but I was able to enjoy a bowl under their fireworks. Everyone say congratulations to Holly and Steve. Hope you're having a great time on your honeymoon.
Holly, I hope you enjoy this, because I don't know what I'm doing right now, and if you don't like this, I'm going to be really sad.
I'm making the viral cucumber salad, but with noodles for day 2 of my instant ramen challenge. I didn't do the full cucumber since I also needed to fit noodles in the container, but I got a good chunk of it. This is an instant noodle salad, and it's meant to be eaten cold, so I knew it would be a good match for this. Then I added everything that Logan did in their viral video: soy sauce, fish sauce, sugar, MSG, sesame oil, grated garlic, green onions, and sesame seeds. In the noodle package, there was this miso vinaigrette sauce and dried veggie flakes. Then I just gave it a really good shake, and it turned out pretty good. This is something that I would make again. I would just add some lime juice and leave it in the fridge longer so that it would be cooler. My friend Pawn was over, so I cooked up a steak and she made a spicy fish sauce. Then we ate them with the cold noodles. What should I do for day 3? For day 3 of my instant ramen challenge, I'm using these volcano curry chicken noodles to make ramen stuffed skirt steak. This is one of those, I have no idea if this will work, but we're going to give it a try attempts. I was looking through my ramen stash and I don't remember why I have the strip of Maggi masala seasoning, but I'm going to use a packet to season the skirt steak. Also going to add salt since it's thicker than I expected. Next, I'm layering on mozzarella cheese. Side note, I accidentally ordered a 5-pound bag of this stuff, so if you have any ideas on how I should use it up, please let me know. Then I added some slices of fresh jalapeno because why not? As I was laying down the noodles, I realized I needed to lay it the other way because I was going to slice them into pinwheels. I had a lot of doubts throughout this entire process, but this is when they really started kicking in. Just kept telling myself to roll tight and keep the innards in. In my head, I thought this was going to be cute little pinwheels, but it's like a giant meat noodle wrap. Do you see those shaking hands? I wasn't sure if that was from excitement or fear of what's to come. Skewers were put in while I was wondering if it was too late to turn back. Made 2 large slices to get 3 pinwheels. I'm not going to talk through all my thoughts during this cooking part. It was just really me saying, don't mess up, don't mess up, don't mess up, and oh man, what did I just create? But flip after flip, nothing crazy happened. It was a freaking miracle. They went into the oven for 15 minutes, and then when I cut into it, it was a medium rare bordering rare. I am so happy with how these turned out. I could taste the curry noodles, the Maggi seasoning, the spice, and no flavor overshadowed any other. I would have just left these in for another 10 minutes, which I did on this last one, and I just had to show off these noodles. Glad I turned them the other way. Today is day 3.5 of my instant ramen challenge, and I know what you're thinking. That's pretty early for a half day, but every time I opened my fridge and saw the ramen stuffed skirt steak, I just kept thinking, I wonder how that would be if I fried it. So here I am, dunking the day 3 masterpiece into this mixture of self-rising flour, beer, and more Maggi seasoning, then into the broken up bits of ramen. I just pat the crumbs into the sides because I feel like it would have been a disaster if I tried to flip it. Slight moment of panic when I slid it into the oil, but all was well. Just fried it until it was a nice color. Taste-wise, I have no complaints. Steak was a bit tough, probably going from being seared to baked to fried didn't help, but yeah, my curiosity was satisfied. Today's ramen challenge is a 3-parter. First challenge, get these 2 times spicy noodles into the Giants vs Vikings game. Once that was accomplished, we went on the field and I was going to see if any players wanted to do the spicy noodle challenge with me. Unsurprisingly, none of them wanted to do it since they were about to play an important game. Now the next part was trying to scope out a room of reporters and NFL and YouTube execs to figure out who'd want to do a spicy interview. I threw out the challenge and a lot of people accepted. I also had them ask me random questions if they wanted to. Hope you all enjoy the segment.
I dared off from Slate Magazine, and I'm very scared.
Good. We're chilling. Taylor Swift are being outside.
I know.
Yeah, you're not going to be safe after this scotch.
Eyes are watering.
Definitely hot. About an 8.5 in my RTL.
Out of 10?
Yeah.
I do not like that.
Today is day 5 of my instant ramen challenge, and it's a pretty simple one, just making a cheesy ramen omelet using this rice cake and fried noodle bowl. Follow the instructions to add water and microwave for 3 minutes, combine it with 2 scrambled eggs, but when I took it out of the microwave, I didn't expect so much liquid. If I had added the egg then, the soup would have cooked the eggs, which I didn't want to happen yet until it was in the frying pan. So I made the executive decision to drain most of it. Poured in the egg and into the pan it went. Added some mozzarella for my 5-pound bag. I froze most of it, by the way, so thank you for those suggestions. Then I hesitated on the soup because it looked like it would be a great dipping sauce for the omelet, but I figured it would help the cheese be nice and melty if I added it now. Now I wanted to flip half of it over, but it just wasn't strong enough to do so, even with the attempt of 2 spatulas. So I thought, screw it, I'll just do a full flip so that it's a round omelet. And in my attempt to do that full flip, I failed and achieved my first goal. So it all worked out somehow. I plated it, and doesn't it look like a crab? This turned out to be very cheesy and delicious. Personally, next time I would just add a salty protein like ground sausage to balance out the mozzarella. This video was probably longer than it needed to be, but I wanted to explain my thought process since it changed quite a bit throughout. Day 6 of my ramen challenge accidentally turned into a spicy challenge, so I saw a comment suggesting that I try to make a pizza pocket, which is the idea I loosely started basing it off of, and I figured cheesy ramen would probably be best for this. Now the only cheesy ramen I had is this ghost pepper one, so I went for it. Never mind the fact that it has an oil packet that says caution, add at your own risk. Then I remembered I had fresh ghost peppers that my friend Pawn gave me from her garden. Ghost pepper with ghost pepper, why not? Going to use biscuit to wrap these all up since they've served me well in the past. Holly was crashing on my couch and I was telling her how much I hated opening these when she told me she loved doing it, so I let her. Just stretched and flattened each one out, stuffed with noodles, mozzarella, quick out of context quote from Holly,
I just want to live my life without a broth.
Ghost pepper, and a pepperoni slice. Placed one over the other to close them up and then forked the edges. I don't really know what the term is for what I'm doing here, and then into the oven for 14 minutes, so this was really spicy. And as expected, I was hoping the cheese and biscuit would be able to balance it out, but it's too overwhelming. My mouth was on fire from the fresh ghost pepper, and it's not bad, like I would eat this again, but there's no wow factor. Just need some tweaks. Today is day 6.5 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm just fixing yesterday's attempt. To make it less spicy, I'm using these cheesy buldak noodles. No ghost peppers were harmed in the making of this video, and I think one of the problems was that when I bit into yesterday's biscuit, I just automatically think it's breakfast food. So I'm adding scrambled eggs to this to fit the theme. Next, I was trying to decide on cutting the pepperoni into strips or squares. The one slice I had in yesterday's wasn't practical since the whole thing came out when I took a bite. This way it can be more dispersed throughout. It's also why I decided to mix the mozzarella, pepperoni, and egg in with the noodles before I added it to the biscuit dough. I even gave it a few shakes for good luck, just the same thing as yesterday, spreading the biscuit out and putting in the filling. Then I crimped the edges before baking it in the oven. Thanks to everyone who helped me with that terminology. I couldn't think of it at the time. This turned out delicious. I would serve this to my friends. I will have to say it's very similar to the ramen buns I've done in the past, but this takes out the guesswork on if the dough is cooked all the way or not. For day 7 of my ramen challenge, I'm making ramen chicken tenders. Seasoned chicken, add extra seasoning to flour, take some of the flour to mix with egg and water to make a batter, and a little bit of cornstarch. I'm stealing a couple of noodle bricks from this jumbo pack to smash for one of the chicken coats. My friend James also found these hot and spicy chicken ramen funyuns that I'm breaking up to add at the end as well. Chicken goes into flour, into batter, and into the broken up ramen noodles. I was just really hoping it would all stay together. While I was letting the chicken rest for a bit, I made a sauce of butter, honey, and this extra buldak spicy sauce that I had. This sauce mixture did make me cough from the spicy fumes, but I survived. Then the chicken went into the hot oil. Surprisingly, everything stayed together and nothing went wrong during the frying. Pulled them once I liked the color, and I didn't make enough sauce to properly coat all of the pieces, but just pretend that I did. I tried the sauce on its own and it was really spicy, but over the chicken it was perfectly balanced. The chicken was a tad bit overcooked, but other than that, I have no complaints. This was crispy, sweet, and savory. My favorite one out of all 7 days so far. Also, I almost forgot the funyuns. I added it on at the end, but it was overkill. The chicken was already crispy and flavorful enough. For day 8 of my instant ramen challenge, I'm serving ramen barbecue pulled pork sliders to 40 plus people at a tailgate. No pressure at all. I'm using the seasoning packet from this jumbo ramen container along with 2 noodle bricks. 75% of the seasoning powder will be mixed with salt and pepper to season 2 pork butts, which I smoked overnight. And I wanted to be creative in using the instant ramen, but I didn't want to go too crazy since I was feeding this to a ton of people. I made barbecue sauce from scratch so that I could add in the rest of the instant ramen seasoning powder. I eyeballed everything since it was 1 in the morning and I just wanted to get it done with. Also broke the noodle bricks and cut the Hawaiian sliders in half to save time time the next day. The pork butts looked great the next morning. I left them unwrapped for the whole cook and wrapped to put in a cooler to rest for the tailgate. The last thing I did before leaving was make coleslaw for the sliders. Once we got to the stadium, it was just assembling everything. Ramen bits went into the coleslaw for extra fried crunch, and then I shredded the pork, which was fun to do in front of an audience. Usually it's just me in my kitchen with my cat. I was sweating from the heat and the pressure, and multiple people had to pat me dry. I'm really happy with how they turned out, and shout out to my cousin Cavell, who wanted to be in the video. He also wanted to let you all know that I'm his favorite cousin, by the way. For yesterday's instant ramen challenge, I made ramen pulled pork sliders, and here's everything that went wrong that I couldn't fit in the 1-minute video. First, I was trying to be proactive by slicing Hawaiian sliders at midnight before the tailgate. One of the packages I opened was moldy. I had to meet everyone early the next morning, so I had to pray that the Instacart delivery with new buns would come in time. Luckily it did. I also prepped the cabbage the night before for the coleslaw, since I read somewhere online that you should salt it for a bit. It's supposed to draw out the moisture and keep it crunchy. The problem was that I didn't check to see how much salt I needed, and as you can see, I was very heavy-handed, thinking I could just rinse off the salt the next morning. I rinsed, and it was so salty, so I quickly had to cut up the other half of the cabbages. Luckily, I had ordered pre-shredded carrots because I think I would have cried if I had to peel and shred them myself. So then the coleslaw was saved. Next, I had eyeballed the barbecue sauce measurements since it was 1 in the morning and I was losing it. My brother tasted it at the tailgate and said it was too salty, but because I have a tendency to mess things up, I had grabbed the largest bottle of barbecue sauce that I had in the fridge for backup before I left the house. So I just mixed some of that with my barbecue sauce. Lastly, I forgot to bring a knife, so we had to use the other end of a serving spoon to cut the sliders. So yeah, crisis was averted, but not without its challenges. You've probably seen a lot of mooncakes across your feed recently, but have you ever seen a ramen mooncake? It's what I'm attempting to do on day 9 of my instant ramen challenge. I'm using a recipe from 2 plaid aprons, and I'm going to replace half of the flour with fine ramen dust. Is it risky making ramen mooncakes when I've never even made mooncakes before? Probably, but this is a challenge after all. For the filling, we're going to go back in time a week when I started the salt curing process on these duck eggs. I included an Indomie seasoning packet since I had an extra one in my ramen stash, and I really wanted to use lotus paste, but I couldn't find it at the store. I did find this red bean paste instead that I'm mixing up with broken bits of this ramen snack. Skipping the seasoning powder because I don't think that's going to help. Rolled out the dough, cut the egg yolk smaller, and tried to put everything together. Did my best getting the filling in. After using the mold, I was pretty proud with how it looked. It was presentable. But then I baked and cut into it. You know how you never judge a book by its cover? Well, you can definitely judge it by the inside. It did not look appealing at all. The salted duck egg and red bean paste is also not a good combo. The ramen bits got soggy and provided zero crunch. The outside crust was actually okay, so I enjoyed eating the edges, but 10 out of 10, I would not make this again. Ramen mug cookie. 3 words you probably don't want to hear in the same sentence. It's the only thing I could think of to do with this campfire s'mores ramen. I've tried them on their own, and it's like hot chocolate with noodles in it. So if you're into that, you should definitely get it. I dusted everything in the cup into a fine powder, added it back in the cup with sugar, butter, salt because it needs more sodium, an egg yolk, chocolate chunks, and self-rising flour. A little mixing and then some more butter since it was so dry. I would have added milk, but I only have milk if I'm doing a spicy challenge. So I added some water after Googling, can you add water to cookie dough? And then into a mug, which I've only ever used for coffee or tea. It's probably scarred for life now. I microwaved it for a minute, and then another minute, and 1 more minute. Taste-wise, it wasn't bad, and that's probably due to all the butter I poured into it, but texture-wise, it was the driest cookie I've ever had in my life. It was like chewing on sawdust. Also, I'm sad I added the chocolate chunks too early, and it's all just mixed in. Funny thing is that I still prefer this over eating the hot chocolate noodles. After my last 2 failed ramen days, I just needed something quick and easy to soothe my soul. Also, my apartment had its water shut off for the afternoon, so my options were limited. There's just something comforting about the Shin black bone broth noodles. I added 2 garlic cloves and more dried ramen toppings. Once the water started boiling, I added the noodles, broccoli, and mushrooms. I wanted more protein, so I added a seared chicken thigh, a dash of chili oil, and that's it. Something easy using items I had in my fridge. Don't have to think too much, and it's an easy win after losing the past 2 days. What are easy toppings you like to add to your instant ramen? Today is day 12 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm letting a stranger pick my meal. I'm in New York City at Instant Noodle Factory, and I asked the employee if he could make me the same order as the person before me. Turns out I was the first customer, so I asked him to make me his favorite order. And little does he know that I just had these Shin black bone broth noodles in my challenge. He added some sausages and a soft boiled egg, and then corn, scallions, fried onion, furikake, kimchi, and beef birria. I had no complaints with any of his additions, and then he picked their lychee lemonade for my drink, mixed everything together so I could get a good taste of the broth, which was spicy and rich. The egg was beautiful, and the sausages were a good compliment since they weren't too salty. Shout out to the employee for choosing my meal. For day 13 of my instant ramen challenge, I did something that I will never do again. I'm in Brooklyn at the YouTube Creator Summit, and we're at a skating rink for a rodeo night. I haven't skated since middle school, and I thought, let's skate and eat noodles at the same time. I mean, what could go wrong? Turns out you can't have food or drinks on the floor, so that scratched that idea. That wasn't even the big problem. After opening the package and seasonings, I couldn't find hot water anywhere. I looked at the food offerings to see if I could find anything that could potentially cook the noodles. No luck. Asked the employees, also no luck. So I could have gone back to the hotel that night and failed the challenge, but I knew I had to at least make an attempt. So in my skates, I added steak slices to the cup and attempted to eat the noodles raw. Needless to say, when I bit into it, it wasn't budging at all. It wasn't like fried noodles that you could at least munch on. I got a lot of weird looks from other people, and I don't blame any of them. It was a bit of a wild idea. My solution was to eat the steak with instant ramen seasoning powder. Moral of the story, sometimes things don't work out and you end up on the ground, but as long as you get back up, you live to fight another instant ramen day. Today is day 14 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm making a ramen smashed burger. First, I'm caramelizing onions since that takes 84 years. The burger sauce is a mixture of mayo, ketchup, mustard, dill relish, Worcestershire, spicy cheese bulldog sauce, and a little bit of pepper. Doesn't this remind you of mixing paint in elementary school? But this is more fun since you get to eat it. Back to the onions, which are looking very nice. I'm using 80-20 ground beef and separating into 3-ounce balls, toasting buttered brioche buns, and I thought I was being really smart by using the squeeze bottle, but the holes were too small. I figured for the noodles, these yakisoba cheddar cheese ones would do well, and typically I would add onion here to smash with a patty, but I'm using the noodles instead. Some Maggi masala seasoning, and here's where things went wrong. The noodles stuck to the pan. Part of it is that I have no idea where my carbon steel skillet is, and I'm using this pan, which works, but the high sides make it hard to get underneath the patty. Was it a fail? Maybe, since it didn't turn out the way I envisioned in my head, but taste and appearance wise, I was happy with it. The spicy mayo sauce was my favorite part. I wouldn't say I failed yesterday's ramen challenge, but I do want to attempt a different version. This time I am not smashing the noodles with the meat, I'm just adding on top of the cheese. So cheddar cheese noodles on top of a slice of American cheese. This is the same spicy bulldog burger sauce and still the same with the caramelized onions and pickles. It looks much better than yesterday's, and it was also much easier to make since it didn't stick. I also appreciated the fact that I could taste the noodles better this way. I liked this version better, but I do want to try another way tomorrow that I've seen suggested in the comments. Today is day 14.75 of my instant ramen challenge, pretty much because it's on theme with the last couple of days. I got a lot of suggestions to stuff the patty instead of smashing it, so I'm using the last of my ground beef, adding American cheese, spicy beef noodles, more cheese, and I saved some of the ramen seasoning to add to the beef. Looks pretty dang good after closing up the sides. The urge to smash the patty in the pan was very high, but I knew it would not hold its structural integrity. Didn't matter since it broke on the side anyway. I ensured that it was cooked all the way through, which made it a little dry. Also, I don't have any more hamburger buns since I used the rest to make smashed burgers for my neighbors, and I didn't want to buy another 8-pack because then I would need to buy more ground beef, and then the cycle continues forever and ever. So the spicy burger sauce saved it from being too dry, and I just plopped it back into the ramen. Not a bad day. For day 15 of my instant ramen challenge, I'm making a breakfast stuffed bell pepper using ground sausage seasoned with stewed tomato instant ramen. The ramen also came with an oil packet. Added crushed noodles towards the end so it could help stay crunchy. Now for the bell peppers, I wanted to stuff the whole thing, but 2 of them had uneven bases, and the one that didn't was moldy inside. I don't know what it is with me and mold during this challenge, but whatever. Stuffed the peppers and added an egg to fit the breakfast theme, propped them up on the side so that the eggs could stay in place, and I also made one without an egg to see if I would like it better. 20 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and the egg whites weren't fully cooked, so I covered them up and threw them back in. Okay, I know it doesn't look that appealing, but it actually was quite good. Or maybe I was really hungry, but the salty meat and seasoning were a good pair with the sweet bell peppers, and I like that the ramen stayed crunchy. Here's the egg sticking to the foil since I didn't even think about the possibility, and I preferred the one without the egg since it had more texture. The egg over the top cooked the noodles and made it slightly mushy, so I guess if you decide to make this, it depends on what you prefer. Also, we're halfway through the challenge. What would you like to see me try? Today is day 16 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm making possibly the world's longest ramen spring roll. Shrimp is seasoned in my never-ending stash of Maggi masala seasoning. I made a hoisin peanut butter sauce using PB2, added apple cider vinegar and honey until it was to my liking. Just a quick note, PB2 doesn't hit like real peanut butter, but it's all I had at home. Using sesame peanut noodles from Boiling Point, cooked the noodles and added it to the sauce mixture. As I'm admiring my prepped fillings, I realized I forgot to cook the shrimp that was chilling in the fridge, so I quickly cooked those up, which didn't take too long. Next was placing down the wet rice paper. And don't worry, I cleaned the table. I got some lettuce, cucumbers, cilantro, and the shrimp, which I was scared for a sec that I didn't have enough to get all the way across. Then added the noodles and sauce. I'm adding the sauce now because I'm giving the extra spring rolls to other people, and I didn't have any sauce containers. Here's the fun part, trying to roll the whole thing. The key was was just to keep it as tight as possible. When I held it up, I thought, wow, my parents would be so proud of me. If you're curious, it measured out to be 41 inches. This was so much fun to do, so I would probably do it again. Only change I would make to this is to add some sambal to the sauce. Today is day 17 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm at my third football game of the month. Neil, the YouTube CEO, was going to do this volcano spicy noodle challenge with me, but then he disappeared. Still don't know where he is, so I pivoted and tried to figure out what I could make using the food available in the suite. And you know what's never let me down? Hot dogs. Found myself some buns, laid the noodles down as a base, and then placed the hot dog on top. And I gotta say, I was scared of getting judged by others for my food combo, but instead of being disgusted, everyone there was really excited to see how it would turn out. I added pickled jalapenos and this cracker snack mix topping. So I did not add the queso because next to it, this chili was calling my name. I even wrangled Emily into trying this with me. If you're wondering, the combo somehow worked.
Not bad. A little spicy. Well, 7 because of the spice level. I'm not a big spice person. What would you say the spice level is? I might be a little bit dramatic and say that it's pretty spicy, but you might have a different...
I've never had bong bao way at the airport. You know what else I've never had there? Banh mi. For day 18 of my instant ramen challenge, I'm flying back to Kansas City from SFO, and I'm crossing off both of those nevers. I got the 5-spice chicken banh mi, and then I had to go to a coffee shop around the corner to buy hot water for the noodles. Don't mind me, I'm just here chilling at the airport, making instant noodles while people walk by to their flights. Unwrapped the banh mi, and I was quite excited to eat it after seeing how good it looks. Added the noodles to the sandwich, and then gave it a nice healthy dunk into the broth. It was an absolute winner. The banh mi and instant noodles had a lot of flavor on their own. Having it together was chef's kiss. The problem, or if you see it as a problem, is that the broth made me eat the sandwich faster. Only change I would make is add less water to the noodles next time. Today is day 19 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm attempting to make ramen soup dumplings thanks to my friend James for teaching me how to make dumpling wrappers during my challenge last year. I did 2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon salt, and then 1 cup of warm water. Added some more flour throughout since it was a bit wet. By the way, I'm using the lid of something for the cutouts that is a sneak peek of an upcoming challenge. Using mama pork flavored noodles, and since this was my first time using gelatin, I had no idea you had to wait hours for it to set. So I had to wait until the next day after I combined it with the ramen broth. Mixed it up with some seasoned ground pork to disperse it. Only cooked the noodles for a little bit since I knew it would also cook in the dumpling. This part was easier than expected. I made sure to add chunks of gelatin broth so that there'd be enough soup. As I steamed it, they expanded and then popped. I learned here that I should have left a hole on top for the steam to escape. Appearance wise, I was really happy. Taste wise, I should have seasoned the pork more and added less water to the broth.
No way.
I kept shaking it to see if I could find some hidden broth.
No.
One of the dumplings had a little bit of soup, so I'm not beating myself up too much for the fail. I think some of you guys know me too well because yes, today is day 19.5 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm re-attempting the soup dumplings from yesterday. The goal today is to actually have soup inside the dumpling. How am I going to achieve that? First, I'm going to add more gelatin broth. One thing that a lot of you brought up that I didn't even think about was the fact that the noodles would absorb some of the liquid, so hopefully this will help. Secondly, I'm going to leave a hole at the top of the dumplings so that steam can escape. Yesterday, they expanded and popped like my parents' dream of me becoming a lawyer. And on that note, one of the dumplings ripped and popped in the steamer. It's okay though, that's why I made extra. Calcifer is pretty used to this. Things were looking quite promising after that though. The dumplings were sagging as I picked them up, which told me they had some liquid baggage. Bit the top off of one and the beautiful soup was inside.
Let's go. There's soup.
Thankfully, I was able to have a redemption, so I don't need a day 19.75. Or do I? If you've watched my ramen challenge the past 5 years, you probably know where this is going. It's day 19.75 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm using the leftovers of everything to make a giant ramen soup dumpling. I layered noodles, the pork mixture, and chunks of gelatin broth in the filling. It's going to be a big dumpling, so might as well add a ton of broth. I was about to start closing it up when I realized this is just too much dumpling wrapper for the filling, so I used a pizza cutter to trim some of it off. And the fun part begins. The goal was to make sure it was able to close up without it falling apart, and of course to make sure there's a hole for the steam to escape. If this popped in the steamer, that would be catastrophic. I steamed it for 18 minutes to make sure it was all cooked. Getting it in was easy, but I didn't know how I was going to get it out. I was too scared to do anything drastic that could pop the dumpling. It was just so beautiful. I decided to wear my barbecue gloves so that I could gently handle it in my hands. Now, I've never cried during this challenge before, but this was a close one. I tried to use the spatula to get underneath the dumpling to hold it, and it popped. I just had to go for it, and while I lost a ton of broth, there was still a lot in it. The skin was too thick on top compared to the bottom, but oh well. This was somewhat of a success. On to day 20 tomorrow. It is finally day 20 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm attempting to make a ramen scotch egg using ramen eggs. I only intended these to be marinated for 24 hours, but it ended up being 72 because of the whole ramen soup dumpling trilogy. I've got some extra ramen bricks to dust up, half into a rough blend and the other half into a fine dust. Egg is going into a sage breakfast sausage wrap, into the fine ramen dust that is acting as the flour, and then into this tiny egg wash bowl.
Why did I?
And then another healthy coating of the ramen. I fried it for 8 minutes, which I thought would be plenty of time to cook the sausage, but per usual, I was wrong and it was still raw. Popped it into the oven for a little bit and it was hot to go. Honestly, I would make these again. These were fun, crunchy bites, and I was able to taste the slightly sweet marinade on the eggs, just added some hot sauce for a kick. While I was editing yesterday's ramen scotch egg video, I realized it looked a bit boring and colorless. So today is day 20.5 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm making a couple of changes. One, I'm adding fresh chopped parsley to the sage breakfast sausage mix, should add some nice color. Secondly, I'm making the sausage layer thinner so that it can fry quicker. The parchment paper was a fail for me since the meat just stuck to it, but I still got the sausage wrapped around the egg. I've made it a habit to save ingredients from the challenge in case things go bad and I need to do a redo. Thankfully, I saved this ramen dust. While the egg was cooking, I made a sauce of not ice cream mayo, Dijon mustard, relish, and sriracha. And yes, this is my attempt at being fancy. And today's looked much better than yesterday's. Although the yolk overcooked a bit since I think I fried it for too long, it was less gray looking as well, and the sauce provided the extra flavor that it needed. If I had lemon, I would have squeezed it over the top, but overall, I'm happy with it. What do you think? It's day 21 of my instant ramen challenge, and I've been watching the culinary class wars. One of the judges, An Sung Jae, has a restaurant that is the only 3 Michelin starred restaurant in South Korea, and he recently did a video with the other judge where he showed how to use roasted garlic to level up instant ramen, and that's what I'm going to try today. I roasted garlic bulbs and then made a little garlic broth. The broth was slightly sweet and had almost a mushroom umami taste to it. In the video, they used the other judge's instant ramen brand, which I don't have, but I read online that it's a combo of seaweed and beef base, so I combined these two, added all of the seasoning packets and removed some of the stray garlic peels, let the noodles cook and removed the rest of the garlic peels, added the white parts of green onions towards the end, and I have to say the extra work in making this was totally worth it. The garlic broth added an extra layer of flavor, like when you use chicken broth instead of water for instant ramen. I ate half of it at this time and thought, wow, I'm eating a whole bowl of garlic. Vampires, beware. I made a curry ramen fried rice for day 22 of my instant ramen challenge. It felt sacrilege breaking up these premium noodles, but I had a plan for them. I started off with making whipped butter using a garlic bulb that I roasted for yesterday's challenge. Also added my last Maggi masala seasoning into the butter, some chopped parsley since it was left over from the scotch egg day. And no, I do not have day-old rice. I did not plan that far in advance. I spread it out and cooled it in the fridge to try and dry it a bit, reverse searing a Delmonico steak, my first time cooking this cut by the way, and then diving into the fried rice. I'm making this meal for 2 because Holly is coming to visit me again. This is like her 3rd appearance in this year's ramen challenge. I used some of the whipped butter before pouring in the eggs. Sadly, the butter lost its whipped texture since I put it in the fridge. Added the noodles and some of the curry paste, which a little goes a long way for this rice. Seared the steak, and while it was resting, I made the curry soup with the rest of the paste and the other seasoning packet, plated everything, and tried to make it pretty, which worked because Holly said it seems like something she'd get at a restaurant. This overtakes my soup dumpling day as my favorite because it was so good that I forgot my steamed broccolini until we were already almost done eating. I happily failed day 23 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'll tell you how. There's a stop between Wichita and Kansas City that I've passed dozens of times, and I've always wanted to stop, but I wanted to beat the Google Maps ETA more. This time, I gave myself the challenge to actually stop, make some Filipino instant spaghetti, and watch the sunset. I missed the sunset by 5 minutes, but there was a group of cars at the stop, which was interesting. While I was setting up, a man named Dennis walked up to me and asked if I was there for the Comet. I said I was actually there to make some Filipino instant spaghetti, and then I asked if he wanted any. He said no, but he offered me some of his daughter's banana bread. We talked for a while, and he mentioned that a comet may be visible tonight, and then while I was finishing up the noodles...
I'm sorry.
It's okay, what's up?
You should see the comet.
I quickly shred some gas station cheddar cheese on the plate, and while I didn't get to eat during the sunset, eating the noodles while looking at a comet last visible from Earth 80,000 years ago was so much better. I only had a couple of bites before Dennis came back to let me borrow his binoculars, and then I spent half an hour looking at the comet. I'm not even mad that I ended up eating cold noodles and hot dogs. It was such a serendipitous moment and a memory I will cherish forever. I'm redoing the Filipino instant spaghetti from yesterday with some additions for day 23.5 of my instant ramen challenge. I hope you don't mind I'm stretching out the challenge a bit, I'm having quite a bit of fun during these 30+ days. And I didn't mean to grab Filipino hot dogs with cheese inside, by the way. The word cheese on the label is really small, but I'm not complaining. I cooked up these instant noodles and saved all the sauce packets to mix with the onion, garlic, and hot dog mixture. I'm also going to include a couple of pictures of the Comet since some of you said you couldn't see it in my last video. Today I'm adding some tomato sauce, banana ketchup, and condensed milk. Janelle told me the condensed milk is sometimes used and sometimes not, depending on the person. I thought, why not? Just added some shredded cheddar cheese on top, and I was a bit worried that this would be too sweet since that's all I could smell while making it, but the hot dogs saved the day along with the sauce packets. This is totally something I'd make again. I loved it. When I first saw this comment, I just knew that this person has never had the amazing combo of mac and cheese and hot dogs. So I'm going to introduce it to you on day 23.75 of my instant ramen challenge, using the last 2 noodle bricks of this huge ramen pack and cooking it like I would boxed mac and cheese. Butter, milk, and I'm taking out the seasoning packet from this Cheetos Cajun cheddar mac and cheese. My first time trying it, so hopefully it's good. And these are the Filipino hot dogs with cheese that I've been using the last couple of days. I couldn't taste as much Cajun seasoning as I was expecting. I added some shredded cheese and a pinch of salt to enhance the flavors a bit. It's good, but doesn't offer the same nostalgia factor as a straight macaroni mac and cheese. But yeah, you should definitely try the combo if you want to be more adventurous with your hot dogs. These are the Korean corn dogs I tried to make 2.5 years ago. As you can tell, it didn't work out, so I decided to do a ramen crossover with my fail series this year, where I attempt to fix my kitchen failures. I'm using Stella and Spice's recipe, which is the same one I used back then, but at the time, my cooking skill level was at -1000, and I'd like to think I'm at least in the positive now. I made the flour mixture and let it rest while I skewered the hot dogs and rolled them in mozzarella slices. I threw them in the freezer for 30 minutes, and luckily when I dropped them in the flour mixture, it didn't deflate like last time. It helps to do a little twisting action with your hands to coat the hot dog. I've got some leftover broken curry noodles that I'm using as the coating, and I was going to pour it out of the bag, but thought, you know what? It would probably be easier if I left it in.
Wow, that actually worked.
Although I still don't like to fry at home that much, I'm getting much better at it. The sauce is a mixture of mayo and the ramen seasoning packet from the ramen mooncake day that I didn't use. This was a much less stressful process than last time. Somehow everything worked out. I'd call it a Korean corn dog redemption. It's day 25 out of 30 of my instant ramen challenge, and I'm making instant ramen for my cousin. She's visiting me and spending the night, and it reminded me of when we were younger. She and her sister spent the night at my parents' house with me and my brother. I don't remember where the parents were, but we were broke and hungry. The only thing we knew how to make in the house was mama tom yum noodles. We cooked up like 5 packs, added some canned Vienna sausages, and fried up eggs. Everything was put into a big pot and placed in the middle of the table. We all just made our own bowls. At the time, it was a great meal because it was comforting and all of us cousins got to share it together. So this is me trying to level up that instant ramen meal now that we're older and less broke. I even gave her the good egg because I'm that nice of a cousin. I've made loaded ramen baked potatoes before during my ramen challenge, but for this year, I wanted to make one that was easier to eat. So today is day 26 of my instant ramen challenge, and I baked a potato along with bacon for the topping. Cut the potato in half and scooped some of the center out. Then I took a stick of butter and rubbed it all over the potato innards and skin. I baked it for an additional 5 minutes on both sides. The carbonara noodles seemed like it would be the best fit for my ramen stash since spicy and creamy is a good mix with all the carbs. My goal with this is that you can get bites of the food that include the potato, the noodles, and the toppings. The one I made in the past required you to build your own bite. I think this would be a great appetizer for a party. Only critique for myself is to get better at baking potatoes. This one was a little bit dry. Today was a fail. I was going to take some of your suggestions from my last video. Basically whip the potato with butter and cream cheese, and it was going to be awesome. But I started this when I knew I didn't have much time since I had to go pick up my parents from the airport. I tried to microwave the potato. It had stickiness oozing out of it, and then when I sliced it, the potato skin peeled off, but I needed it to stay intact so that I could fill it with ramen and potato filling. It was also a little green, so I made the executive decision to scrap this day. And it's going to be fixed in a few days because I need to host my parents and then go out of town for a couple of days, but I promise there will be a day 26.75.
Oh no!
Today is day 27 of my instant ramen challenge, and my parents are in town, so they're helping me make fried instant ramen spring rolls using 7-level spicy noodles. This is also my first time using this rice paper that is specially made for frying. The interesting thing about this is that you don't just use water to wet it. It tells you to also add sugar and vinegar. Side note, no matter how successful you are at YouTube, there's always a dog living in Asia doing better. The rice paper looks exactly the same as the other rice paper that I use, so I was interested to see how it would fry. I kept the filling simple since I was going to wrap these in lettuce and other stuff, just adding some name, which is Vietnamese grilled pork sausage.
Good job.
Yeah, because I'm your mom.
My parents also made one as well. I guess I just now noticed that my dad does the rolling backwards technique. We fried these outside since my parents were sleeping over, and I didn't want my apartment to smell like oil all night. So the frying was a bit of a debacle. The oil was at 350, but that wasn't hot enough to get the crispy exterior. My dad kept saying I got the wrong rice paper, but I told him this literally said it was made for frying. So we called my mom outside, and she said it looked good.
They're good though. No,
I was skeptical, but on the next batch, I waited until it was at 400, which made it fry better, but I was impatient and put 3 in, and they stuck. So yeah, if you want to fry these, wait until it gets to 400 degrees Fahrenheit and don't crowd the pan or else they'll stick. We wrapped these in lettuce, pickled carrots and daikon, and cucumbers, then dipped in a fish sauce that my mom made. Very crispy, yet it kept the rice paper chewy. The noodles were quite spicy. This is something I definitely make again and probably bring to a party.
Yeah.
Alright, this was probably the hardest ramen stash I've had to find. If you're new here, this is my Forbidden Ramen series where I borrow from my friends' ramen stashes when they leave the premises. So first, I kept getting distracted by all the cool gadgets and suits around the Hacksmith facility. Then I got distracted by the Bat Cave. I even checked the roof with no success, but then I found a secret room. I was so sure I found it when I saw the safe in the bathroom, but no luck there. I checked this closet that had a secret entrance out the back, but I've seen enough scary movies to know what happens when you go exploring. So I closed that up real quick, and my spidey senses went off when I saw this washer. James said the stash well, but I could sniff it out. I chose the pho ramen since 1, I've never tried Mr. Noodles, and 2, I was curious to see their take on pho. It also might be my first time trying Canadian ramen. So it doesn't taste like pho, but it's still good though. I would just say it's a slightly spicy beef ramen. I'm going to finish this and then go explore some more before James gets back. Today is Halloween, so it's only fitting that I made a cursed instant ramen for day 29 of my challenge. I bought this in Japan because the packaging looked cool, and it wasn't until I got back home that I realized the noodles and broth were blue. I wanted it green for Halloween, so I toasted curry powder to get the yellow, which would hopefully turn green when I add the blue soup base. And the color started off more of a murky algae colored green. For toppings, I added jalapeno and garlic pickled eggs that I sliced in half and cut out nori sheets to make eyeballs. Then I took a red hot link to try and carve out fingers. This is my very first time doing this, so it took a second try for me to be somewhat happy with how it looked. I even used my own finger as a model. Now, as the noodles sat longer in the broth, it started to look more green, and when I microwaved the hot dog finger, it made it wrinkly like how dry my hands get in the winter. I tried to add hot sauce and make it look like blood splatter, but yeah, just pretend it looks real. The broth was a curry beef flavor, and most of the toppings worked except for the pickled eggs. Not a good type of sour in your noodle soup. What do you think? Does it look cursed to you? I have a question for y'all before I end my ramen challenge. There's a lot of new faces since I started my first ramen challenge in 2020. I'm curious and want to learn more about you all. Who are you? Where are you from? What are your goals in life? Do you like watching food videos? Why or why not? And what's your favorite meal? Just thought this would be a fun thing to do before I end my 5th annual instant ramen challenge.
This is actually crazy.
Today was supposed to be day 30, the last day of my instant ramen challenge, but I promised y'all that I would come back to day 26.75 for a loaded ramen baked potato redemption. And here I am in Detroit asking my dear friend John to help me. We baked some potatoes, scooped out the insides, oiled them up, sprinkled with salt, and they went back into the oven. I cooked the noodles and gave them a nice ice bath. The potatoes were looking good. Boba was looking good. We took the sauce packets, added water, the potato innards, and then blended it up until it was a good sauce consistency. Added the carbonara powder packets in, mixed, and then added the noodles. And they went into the beautiful potato skins. Shredded some Parmesan on top and then air fried them. John cooked up some fancy looking bacon that had a smoke ring on it. Then he had some creme fraiche in the fridge that we added along with chives, and that's it. I don't know if I can top this next year.
Whoa.
It is so good.
The sauce had a pleasant, slightly gritty texture to it from the potato that was mixed in, and there was just enough of it to get the spice flavors. Between 3 people, there were absolutely no leftovers.
That is stupid good.
So I thought I had this genius idea for day 30 of my instant ramen challenge, but it just made me extend my challenge. I bought bun bao flour with the intent to make ramen soup bao mooncakes. The idea popped into my head when I was putting away my mooncake molds. What if I could have soup inside of a bao? So I gelatinized spicy instant ramen, made the bao dough, and proceeded to wrap the ramen soup in the bao. Then I put it into the mooncake mold and messed up the first one because I totally forgot to add flour to make it non-stick.
Why did I not think of that?
The good news is that it was salvageable. I also made a couple of round ones, which the mold didn't hold up that well. Steamed them first as testers. A little bit of broth seeped out during the cooking, but not much. So I totally forgot from making the ramen soup dumplings that the noodles soak up all the broth. There was none inside and the flavor had diluted a bit. I honestly thought this was going to work out for my last day, but we'll see what I can do. So I've got good news and I've got bad news. We'll start with the bad, which is for day 30.5 of my instant ramen challenge. I tried to pan fry the ramen bao soup mooncakes that I made. The thought process was that it would have less time to cook the noodles, which were absorbing all the broth. Instead, it wasn't fully cooked and the broth was nowhere to be seen. I'm making the decision to try to fix this, but not until next year's challenge. Maybe I'll learn something over the next year that will help. The good news is that I'm extending the challenge by 2 days to include a couple of items that I've made in the previous ramen challenges, but not yet this year. Let me know if you can guess what they are. Today is day 31 on my instant ramen challenge, something that's never happened before, but I just couldn't end the challenge without making a ramen grilled cheese, aka a melt. I started off with a butter spread that included chopped parsley and garlic confit that my friend James gave to me, slathered that onto a few slices of sourdough bread, and then toasted them. Decided to make this a triple decker sandwich for the heck of it. I sous vide some smoked brisket I had in the freezer, and when I went to slice it, I realized old me already sliced it up. Laid down a layer of shredded sharp cheddar cheese for the sourdough to sleep in, added the brisket, 2 slices of Munster cheese, slice of bread, more shredded cheese, 2 times spicy noodles, more Munster cheese, and the last slice of bread. To finish it off, I had to add a cheese crust to the other side. And that's it, a triple decker spicy ramen cheesy brisket sandwich. One of my favorite creations so far. I don't think this could work without spicy ramen noodles. It's a great complement to the cheese and buttered bread. Today is day 32, the last day of my instant ramen challenge. Again, I couldn't end this without making ramen from scratch like my previous years, and earlier this year I went to ramen school in Japan where we learned to make many different types of ramen. My absolute favorite was the tori python, 1 because chicken is my favorite protein, and 2 you can achieve similar richness to a tonkatsu but in a shorter amount of time. The broth creates a silky smooth mouthfeel that I love, and you can use chicken carcasses and chicken feet that most people throw out anyway. Eggs were 6 minutes and 50 seconds, and I poured the leftover egg seasoning onto bamboo shoots. I love sous vide chicken breasts, and I did 150 degrees Fahrenheit for 2.5 hours, and then the next day I worked on the noodles, which still is to this day my least favorite part of the process. I broke my last pasta machine, but this one connects to my stand mixer, which makes things so much easier. Noodles were thicker than I wanted, so good lesson for next time, but I'm very happy with how it all turned out. Weather is starting to get cold, so this was perfect. I do have a quick half day tomorrow to really end the challenge. Alright, today is truly the last day of my 5th annual instant ramen challenge. It is day 32.5, and I'm making instant ramen for my neighbors. Instant in the fact that they just have to cook the noodles and heat everything up. In my last video, I made chicken ramen from scratch, and I made extra to feed my neighbors. Broth was stored with the tare, and then I made boxes of the chicken oil, sous vide chicken breast, seasoned egg, green onion, and the bamboo shoots. And the noodles were in a separate baggie. Then they all went into the community fridge to share. I hope you all enjoyed this year's instant ramen challenge. I certainly did. Okay, this is day 33 of my instant ramen challenge. This time, it's for real, my last day. This is Amna. She's Sohaila's daughter, and I did a video with them 5 years ago back when I first started food videos. They own a Pakistani food stall here in Kansas City. This is before I had a personal brand. I was just highlighting a lot of local family-owned restaurants, and I became friends with them. Amna messaged me and said we should try a butter chicken ramen using their Pakistani butter chicken, and I could not turn that down, so here I am. They showed me the process of how they make their butter chicken, and then of course we had to use Maggi noodles with this. Added a healthy heaping of butter chicken on top of the bed of ramen noodles, and then some dried fenugreek leaves, cilantro, jalapeno, red onion, hard-boiled egg, and butter. I tried the butter chicken on its own, which is already freaking amazing, and then with the noodles, the Maggi added a salty and slightly spicy tang to it. It was really good. The funny thing is, Sohaila is not a fan of fusion foods. She likes traditional food like the samosa chaat that she made for me, so I asked her if she would ever serve the butter chicken ramen, and this was her response.
Hello!
Every year, I make a short video to recap my 30-day instant ramen challenge, and this was my 5th year. I have to say it was one of my favorites. As you can tell by me extending it, there's a total of 46 days. It gets a bit more challenging to come up with new ideas, but that's the fun part of it. I think I took a lot of stress out of this year because last year I kept thinking I needed it to be better than the year before, so I was overthinking things. This year, I just rolled with the punches and made whatever I felt like making. It was totally worth it to bring you all the challenge, even though I was dreaming of noodles almost every night. Let me know if you have any favorites from this year, and I'll see you all next year for another ramen adventure.